guys, I want to talk to you today about 2B, establishing a culture for learning. So 2B in the Danielson framework is probably not going to be assessed by your administration because this is a high level standard. So I know it sounds, like establishing a culture for learning. I do that all the time. I'm a teacher. I always establish a culture for learning. But this standard in particular, is very specific and it's very nuanced. So this is the kind of standard that is not in a regular classroom. 2B, what is required to get effective or highly effective in it is kids that are above tier 1. So I'm talking about a gifted class. I mean, your kids are hovering. They're hovering over tier 1. This is how good they are. They are self-directed and they are a part of the planning process. So for 2B, the way to get a really highly effective here, or effective, is that you are including the kids in the planning. The kids are coming up with how to solve problems. We're talking STEAM, STEM, projects of that nature, okay? This is project-based learning, like times 10, okay? So this is why I said it's geared toward a gifted classroom based on what you read in the component, right? Establishing a culture for learning. So this is not the kind of classroom that's going to be traditionally run, okay? So your kids are not sitting in their desks, listening to your little 10-minute, your 10-15-minute lesson and then going back to their desk to do their independent work. These kids walk in, they get right to work, right? So this is something that maybe it's an ongoing project, but they're coming in and they are deciding how they're working, the materials that they're working with, and how they are going to use their skills to the best of their ability in a group project, right? Or something like that. Could it be individual? Yes, but this is really intended to be like a group classroom project of your top tier kids, top tier kids. So where the teaching comes in is that, yes, you are writing the lesson. You may be writing a lesson for every single day based on the different components of this project, right? So this is what you're thinking about. You're thinking of a multi-level lesson where, while you will need a lesson every day, the kids are working towards something big, right? The teaching also comes in where you are limiting the projects. I don't know where. I trip over my own words. So you are limiting the project. So what I mean by that is that based on your kids' skill set, right? Because you have to assess who's where. Who's high level, who's just, who's genius at genius level, right? Who's going to be bored with certain projects, right? Who you're going to pair up together. So it's up to you to select what the projects are going to be based on your kids' data and what you think they can handle and how they can be pushed. And then you let them enter the process of planning with you once you have the projects, right? So you're looking at your data. Where are my kids? Who's my high level? Who is at genius level? Who can I pair with who? Based on the data that you have for what you've been teaching so far, right? You're probably teaching high level English, ELA, high level humanities lessons, math lessons, etc. So science, science projects, things like that, social studies. So now you're picking the projects. Maybe you have 5 to 10 different projects. You're presenting it to the students. The students are having a thought process with you, a back and forth, right? They're discussing what could go well, what could go wrong with the project, with the classwork, with the independent work, however you decide to roll it out. And then they are discussing amongst themselves. Once you make the teams, you're making the teams, they're not making the teams. Once you make the teams and how they're going to work together, they're going to vote on what they're going to do, and they're going to have time to discuss and unpack and figure out what the end goal is and how they're going to get there and in what time frame. Okay, so this standard to be establishing a culture for learning is you doing very minimal work. You're only selecting the kind of teaching or what you're going to teach based on your kids' high level skill set, right? So it can't be anything that's going to bore them. It can't be anything that's not going to push them. Okay, and you have to know your kids, right? So once they are, knee deep into this project, they are exhibiting intrinsic value. They want to show off. Okay, your high level, high tier kids that are above tier 1, they want to show off their knowledge and their work. So they're really excited to establish this culture of learning within that classroom. 2B is intended for a class that is buzzing and busting at the seams, right? To share their knowledge and collaborate with others that are also at their level. So this is not really intended for a regular classroom. So if your district is assessing you, is telling the kid, your teacher, your principal to assess this standard 2B, just know that it's intended for a gifted classroom, okay? And gifted usually means that they're learning at a faster pace. They're learning the same things that a regular classroom would learn, but they're learning it at a faster pace and they're being challenged more. So what happens is when you're learning at a faster pace in a gifted classroom is that in a regular classroom, for example, you have your curriculum map and you've created your lessons, and your lessons are stretched out over that 10-month period, right? In a gifted classroom, your lessons from a curriculum are going to stretch out over maybe 6-7 months, right? So there's a lot of time at the end or in between, really. I suggest in between to launch these kinds of high level projects and learning, right? Every single lesson from the curriculum, you're going to be asking more of them, and they want to give it, right? They want to give it. So these are the kinds of kids that we're talking about here. So establishing a culture for learning, the kids are doing it with you. That is what the standard is asking for, that you are allowing the kids to establish this culture of learning with you and plan out the learning with you, right? You only come in when it comes time to assess the student, to pick out the learning, and to figure out how you're going to push students so that they learn more and expand their skill set. Okay? So I hope this is helpful for 2B, and I will be back with 2C. Bye.